Okay, so I'll send that to Dave. Dave's joined. Perfect. So, Dave, I think either you can... Oh, here we go. Perfect. Okay. David, thank you for agreeing to come on and have a little chat with me.
Right. Okay. Oops. Hang on a minute. It's all right. I just I've accidentally switched my computer. I wanted to put the. Is it best sideways? This?
No, it's probably better lengthways. Otherwise, I know you're in Australia, but you might look like you're upside down.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. Right. Just going to work out how to organise this. I think I'll put. Yeah. If I had it like, is that okay? No, you won't go upside down, will you? That's all right.
Yeah, that's the best way there.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to hope we've got enough juice to do it, because the plug is in the bottom of the phone.
Don't worry.
Do you see what I mean?
We will. Whatever we last for, it'll be brilliant. I just thank you for agreeing to come on and have a little chat. I know there's a lot of people who were.
How's that?
Interested. That's perfect. That is perfect. Right. There was a lot of people who were interested to hear, and I thought, you know what? I think David would be a really interesting person to have a chat with. You know, reference.
Well, I feel under pressure now. You've put me under the pump here, but anyway, all good.
Well, everything you do is under pressure, so we should be all right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I thought I just want to chat with you about, how you've, adapted your coaching method into golf. Because obviously, when I first heard of the name Dave Alred, it was going back to the Rugby World Cup when Johnny Wilkinson was kicking balls through, and with unbelievable accuracy at the biggest time probably of a player's life. And then the next thing I see Dave Alred is working with Luke Donald, and I thought, what an amazing different to go from rugby, which is obviously a completely different sport, to golf, and then to take somebody and move them so far up the tree. And then to do this, obviously, do the similar thing with Francesca. I mean, it must have been a big difference going from rugby to golf.
Well, it's funny that, but the higher up that you are in sport, with the increase in standard becomes the increase in consequence, and as that gets bigger and bigger, believe it or not, the sports actually converge.
Oh, okay.
So the sort of mentality of preparing for a great event, and I don't like saying the best game of your life, the most important game of your life, because I think that actually is just clutter. It's another great opportunity to take a challenge. And that's the way I look at it. And I will say in the same breath, look, if we don't make the cut or we don't win, we're still going to be alive next week. Whereas some people like to think it's do or die. And I think that's A, unhealthy, and B, I think that if you have a tendency to tighten up, that will just tighten the screw even more. Yeah. So I don't adhere to that. But in terms of getting ready to do your very best on this occasion, and if you have the right habit, when you do that, you then review it afterwards, and you don't review it with good or bad. You just review it and say, right, if I had that again, is there anything I would do differently? And if you have that kind of non-judgmental attitude towards your own performance, you still celebrate when it's right. then I think you survive mentally and you're a much more stable equilibrium to perform than if you're continually up and down. So that philosophy was the same with Johnny and was the same with Luke and the same with Francesco. Now, that sounds quite straightforward, but what I haven't told you is how hard they practice.
Right.
Because the practice and what we do in practice and the consequence of practice, I try and make that greater and more frustrating and more demanding than the actual tournament.
Okay. So, I presume the thing in golf is when 9 times out of 10 people practice, that there is no consequence to any shot. There's obviously consequence when they're playing, but when they're practicing in the way in which people have normally practiced with bucket balls and hit them at the target, there is no consequence from shot to shot. All we purely do is just put the ball down and hit it. So
I agree. That's what most people do, and that's why most people don't realize their potential. If however, I say, look, okay, there are 4 different targets on the range, okay, and you can measure them with your rangefinder and so on, and you know roughly whether they're within 10 feet of the pin. Okay, and what I want you to do is and the first one might be a pitching wedge, the next one might be a 7-iron, and the next one might be a 3-wood, and then the last one is a little chip, 30 yards, okay? And I said, okay, right, the 3-wood, you can go between, that marker and that marker, okay? And what I want you to do is to see if you can get all 4 in a row. And you would be amazed at how wound up people get. Yeah. Because each one is demanding, and it takes a lot. And I did this with a guy, I won't tell you his name because he's probably European Tour standard here in Australia. And we just did 3 sequences. We did 1 chip, a 9-iron, and a 4-iron. And it took him 40 minutes to get it right.
Wow.
And he was fried at the end, completely fried. He said, I've never been like that because everything was demanding. Every single shot demanded, and it was a different club, and you had to start again. And that's the bit that people tend not to practice, is the actual resetting and starting again. Because if you think about it, golf, as in goal kicking, is only 1 shot, 1 opportunity.
Yes.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense to hit 50 balls with the same club to the same target.
Yeah.
Because in fact, your only match shot is the first one.
Yeah. Do you know, it's interesting that is because, I have this thought with a lot of the juniors I teach, that, all we are training to do is be able to execute the shot when we need to do it.
Yes.
Sometimes what happens in practice is almost this trial and error way of doing it. So if the first one doesn't work, I'll try something else. Until at some point one goes at the target and they go, oh, good shot. And I said to him, yeah, but how many shots has it taken you to actually do that? Yeah. You start putting different targets in, 4 different targets like you suggested and things, which give 4 completely different disciplines to power, to full shot, and then you've got one that's 30 yards. You can actually get more frustrated as well. If you get to the last one and it's a chip and you fail, or you don't actually do the last one, which you would perceive to be the easiest one, correctly. You're going to start again.
Yeah. I think the thing is, I think the problem that we have in society and hence with younger players and people starting up, people don't buy green bananas anymore. They're not prepared to work. They're not prepared to say, this is probably going to take me about 8 weeks before I get confident of it. It is actually, I've had a lesson. And, why can't I do it? And then what happens is, and unless the language is right and the way and the environment and so on, then what happens is I can't do it as well as him, regardless of who him is.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm a failure, and I give up.
Yeah.
Because nobody likes failing. Because I think, unfortunately, in this society, failure is frowned on. And people don't understand that actually we want to have another word there, because actually it's, I wasn't able to match my intention, but I'm going to do something different so that I can match my intention. But the shorthand for that is, unfortunately, is I messed up. I'm not any good.
Yeah.
And I got 1 out of 10. And therefore I'm rubbish. Because even the way people calibrate scores, to me, is horrible. If you know, out of 10, if I said to somebody, well, you know, how good are you? You know, they'll say, oh, I'm about 3 out of 10. Now, what they're really saying is, I'm rubbish.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do you like at this? Oh, I'm about 8, 9 out of 10. And I said, okay, so how far can you improve? And then they think about it and they go, oh, yeah, I can't improve very much. I said, well, of course you can. You're not number 1 in the world, are you? Therefore, you can improve. You know, and that, and even if you're number 1 in the world, you still have to improve. So the point I'm making is that we're cluttered with a lot of stuff that doesn't enable people to have the freedom of learning how learning should be.
Yeah. And I think that I think there's then a balance between the ability to practice in a way that allows you to improve, and then just practicing a technique that really has no consequence to
yeah, well, right. So let me just come in there. There's actually, I divide practice into 3 segments. I have repair, which is technique, which is learning a technique, which is very, very important. Then I have training, which is number of reps. But there's a consequence with it. So, you know, let's just see how well we're mastering this 9-iron. Okay, there's our stock distance. I want to see how many 9-irons it takes you to get 5 within 10 yards. So that might be a mid-handicapper.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if I do it like that, there is no failure. There's just relative degrees of success.
Yeah.
Because if it takes me 5, you know, then I'm going to say, okay, right, let's try that again. And now let's reduce it to 5 yards.
Yeah.
You see, and if it takes him 15 to get 5, I'm going to see, well done, really good application. Now, what do we need to do differently so that we can get that number down for you?
Yeah.
But he has not, or she has not failed.
Yeah, I get it. And I think the thing with that is as well, I've certainly seen it in younger ones, is it develops that professionalism to actually set up in a way that they would on the course and have a routine to doing something as opposed to just hitting it. Because clearly if they just hit the ball at the 9-iron at the target, it might take them 20. If there's actually a time, you know, where even if they go back to their bag and they put their club away, then they start again, but there's your ball. You can get so much more out of a player.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
But do you know, there is another another issue is that we are so outcome driven as coaches often that it interferes with the learning. Now, I have got a golden rule is I commend effort and commitment before outcome.
Yeah.
If I've got a kid who's working really hard, you know, I find out what's right and I might say, you know, your posture is outstanding today. Forget about what's happened with the balls, okay? but I just love the way you commit to every single shot. You know, and I need them to feel good about putting effort in. And that even goes with professionals. I'll tell you a story, and I'm sure Fran won't mind me saying this. First time I worked with him was in LA, pre to the, I think it was Northern Trust then, rather than the Genesis. And it was our first, and we arrived a day early, and we did a whole load of short game stuff. And we did some standard stuff. Okay, right, let's just put the balls down here. Okay, let's chip to that flag over there. How many does it take to get 5 within 3 feet? And 3 feet is just the putt, is the putter length. Okay, so, and the caddy was helping me, so it was really good. So, right, okay, that was good. And we got to the stage where it was 7 to get 5. I mean, obviously, we're talking about PGA player here.
Yeah.
And then we moved it round and took some out of the bunker. Same thing again, and we did some out of the rough and so on. And the short game area was quite a collection of stuff on it. And then I just said, well, let's try this from the rough here. And I didn't look at it carefully enough, but this shot was horrible. It demanded a flop shot to land in a plateau about a square foot on the green. And only then would it just trickle and roll to the hole. So if it was too short, it would hit a downslope and shoot across. Too long, it would hit virtually impossible, right? And he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going. And I think he'll tell you, I think it was something like 48 shots to get 5. And naturally, this was our first time of working. I said, he's going, gosh, that's not very good. I said, that's fantastic. And he looked at me, and he must have thought, you're taking the mickey here. I said, no. I looked at you. I watched you on every single shot. All but 2, you were totally committed to. And it didn't quite work. And you reset. And you committed again. I said, that is the development of resilience. I can't give you a pill for resilience. I can't tell you to be resilient. You have to get there. And this was a massive step to getting there.
I mean, that's a skill that all great sportsmen have: resilience, determination. To actually do the best, even if it is 48. I mean, if the shot's almost impossible. So and he wasn't in the same mindset. That could have took him 158 shots.
Wouldn't have made any difference.
You know what I mean? It's simple as well, isn't it?
Well, it's being clear in your mind that what it needs to perform is attitude first, attitude and application. And ability comes way down the far end. Because I know so many players just got to walk along the driving range on a tour event with bags of ability that can hit the ball and you think, wow, but they're never at the leaderboard.
Yeah.
And it's the others, it's the attitude, application, okay? That's the bit that does it. So the attitude, and it's funny, I keep looking at trying to find the DNA of a champion, and I'm not sure I've got it, but I'm close to it. And it is an undying humility to want to learn, but really tough. And those two don't necessarily go together. Because if you get somebody that's tough, they're often a bit arrogant.
Yeah.
And if you get somebody that's really humble, they're often lacking confidence.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an odd thing to get, but I know that Fran has that. Yeah. And Johnny has it. Johnny Wilkinson has it. And I try and preach that, and George Ford is very similar to that in terms of constantly getting better and so on. And he had, a rough time when he was first at Leicester. didn't get any games at all, and that helped to build his resilience. So that things, you can kind of see it. And if you work with somebody, I make a point of saying that's it. And it kind of gives them a bit of a mold to drop into.
Do you think they is that something they are, I wouldn't say born with it, but is that something that the training teaches them in a lot of ways?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both. I think that I definitely feel that you can influence an individual in terms of making a big song and dance about the qualities that you feel are really going to help them to perform and sustain the performance throughout. And the other part of it is that if you're looking at attitude, application, and for whatever reason, injury or whatever, the player doesn't make it in sport, those qualities will help him make it in life. And I think that we need to have a holistic view of somebody. I'm not going to say to you by any stretch of the imagination, every golfer I work with, I want him to win a major. I mean, yes, I'd like him to, but I don't think any less of them, because all my work is based on that person's margin. So if I try and give you a simple example, let's just say, we're looking at press-ups. I know it's a bit off the subject. If your maximum press-up was 25, I'm going to work with you really hard to get in that zone of 24, 25, 26, maybe 27, but we will get there, 28. Okay? And I'm going to be totally committed to you getting that. Somebody else comes along and they can do 47 press-ups. I'm going to be working with them at the 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. And I'm just going to be just as enthusiastic and just as committed at their margin as I am with your margin. And I never will compare the two of you. And sadly, a lot of coaches, particularly performance directors, like to sit back and have charts and perform one and make it really obvious. And I think that sometimes that can create arrogance, and other times it can completely undermine somebody. And I think with young players, people coming into any game, whether it's golf or rugby, it is always working at their margin and celebrating the success when they're at their margin and they get a personal best or they go a little bit further. And that is crucial.
I think that's interesting as well, Dave, because certainly, let's say from a golfing perspective, it's very easy to end up playing against somebody else and losing, even if it's just around the green or the chipping green. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember a young girl who used to come, and every week she would have lost. She would have lost every game every week, right? But like you said, she put in every bit of effort every single week to win. But at the moment in time, wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, if you had that again, what I would have done straight away is say, right, here's your diary, here's your scorecard. Okay, right. Now, I'm chipping that. How many is it going to take you to get 5 within that? So she plays against her previous self.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then somebody can be good at chipping, somebody else could be good at putting, somebody else could be good at driving the ball. It doesn't matter what it is. It's against their previous self. And that, to me, is crucial, because if I play my best, okay, and let's just say I play a round of golf in a monthly medal and I shoot 4 under. And I would be over them. Oh, wow, how good is that? And I lose because somebody else shot 6 under. It doesn't make any difference. There's not interest. And in fact, there was a really interesting situation in my first year with Fran. I don't know if you remember, we came second at Wentworth. And what had happened was one guy who, the weather we were 9 holes out and the weather kind of turned. And I'm just trying to think of the bloke's name who won it, who shot a phenomenal score. But there was nothing we could do about it. Yeah. So, so when you review a round, so much is, he came 3rd or he came 5th. I'm not interested. I'm really not interested. Okay. What I'm really interested in, what was good about the round? Tell me about the good shots. And most people, and it was Alex Noren. I've just seen that. Thank you very much. Who shot 62 in that last round. Okay. Phenomenal score. Take nothing away from Alex. Okay. But, we couldn't do anything about it. You see. So you just go, right, okay, it is what it is. But we played well that week. And we played well that round. And when we analyse our own performance indicators and the way we look at the round and look at our targets, we did well. But the quick answer is, but you didn't win. And I'm going, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I know that if we keep getting better than our previous self, okay, we will get there.
And it seems it's quite motivating as well when, you're almost raising the bar for their performance. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Against things where they'd be setting goals, and the goal would be to win a tournament. And I said to him, but how can you win the tournament if you can't influence anybody else? You could play your best brand of golf. They could play brilliant, like the Alexander Noren scenario.
Yeah.
And you lost.
Yeah. But you see, that's because we're hung up on the language of win or lose. We're still and we're win or lose, good or bad. And those are so emotive and so destructive and so misleading, because you might win one week and then you, quote, lose the next week. Well, no, how did you play? I'm hitting the ball well. My fairways were up. My greens and regulations were up. My shortest miss, my putting, was 8 feet. So that meant everything inside 8 feet I hold.
Yeah.
A lot of things you can be pleased about. And the interesting thing is that if you really analyze those segments, if you like, they actually tell you how to practice.
Yeah.
So for example, I did a very simple thing in Italy, and I had some kind of beginners and high handicappers. And the challenge was, Dave, all right, so how are you going to cope with these? It was a bit of a throw-down gauntlet, to be honest. And I said, okay, well, this is how I would do it. So if I had a beginner, and I got these people around, I said, right, what I want you to do to start off with, okay, is I want you to hole a putt from 2 feet. And they're kind of looking at me and all the rest of it. And I said, right, now I want you to go 4 points round the hole and hole a putt from 2 feet. Okay? And everybody hold it. And they're all going, well, this is easy. I said, right, now I'd like you to hold the putt from 3 feet. Can you do that? Okay? And a couple of people missed. I said, okay, right, let's hit one. I said, so my question I want to ask you is, how big is your dustbin lid where you will not miss? Okay, is it 2 feet or is it 3 feet? So then they started, oh, right, okay, so we're getting it. So most of them got 3 feet. And they said, right, anybody want to try 4 feet? And of course, 4 feet is suddenly, a bit wobbly. They said, right, now here's the next thing. So we put the tee pegs around 3 feet. I said, right, how far away can you put the ball on the green to guarantee to get inside 3 feet? Is it 8 feet? Is it 10 feet? Is it 20 feet? And virtually, it was nearly an hour when they came back with all different numbers. Okay, I said, right, now, let me just get it. If we put a circle of that number that you've given me that will guarantee you to get inside the small dustbin lid, okay, that's your target to the pin. That will give you 2 putts. And then, because for most people, when they teach golf or introduce golf, they start with the driving range, get the driver out, bang, bang, bang. And I said, no, let's start with scoring first.
Yeah.
Completely different. And it was quite nice because there were a couple of women there, and of course they weren't intimidated because there was no driver. It was putting and chipping, and they could do that. So we then built that up. And then I said, right, now here's the next thing. How far can we go away from the green and guarantee to get into the big dustbin lid? And if you built that up, you would have a very, very good practice regime that would be very motivational for somebody starting the game. Because most people who started the game are embarrassed because they can't hit a driver a long way, or it goes all over the place. And I'm going, forget about that. Let's start with the scoring. Yeah. And then we actually might get more people playing par threes and all the rest of it. But it is so much better to get, and then they when they practice, they go, okay, what are you practicing on today? I'm practicing on my long putts. I want to get my dustbin lid bigger. So they do the 3 foot. How far do I go out? Then somebody else will say, now I want to get my inner dustbin lid a bit better. I would like to get it to 4 feet. Because if I get that to 4 feet, then my bigger lid is better. If I get my bigger lid better, then I can get the ball from further away down the fairway. Yeah. And I sort of built that throughout the game. And they all had a game. And I'm hopeful, cross fingers, that the pros there took that on to teach them how to practice.
Well, and I think the player then understands as well, Dave, what they want to practice to become better.
And why, yes.
You know what I mean? So there's an ownership then of I want to get better at this because that'll enable me to create this score or go further back,
Exactly.
Which is, I think is a great way of doing it. Great way. And the interesting part is that there's a realization as well, isn't there, as to, what will allow you to, let's say, make an up and down.
But and also, the other thing is, there's a realistic expectation.
Yeah.
You're not, I play against somebody, let's say, who's off scratch, and I'm playing off 15. Just let's get real about this, and it's not good or bad. It's, that's his dustbin lids are going to be a different size to mine. So what? But if I kept working, I could get my dustbin lid smaller. And it suddenly, it's a much, and also for beginners who, if you like, mentally, particularly older people don't like failing. There's a real negative avoidance about doing something that's uncomfortable or has a high risk of failure. Now, I believe that if you do the bins, there's no risk of failure.
Yeah.
Because we're only building on your own success.
Yeah. And there's no how to put it, there's no advantage to size or strength or age or
no, nothing at all.
To that. You know what I mean? It's a slate where everybody can do it. You know what I mean? And
absolutely. And I think that is the priceless thing about golf. I wish it was more. I wish the golf fraternity and the clubs and if you like the culture around golf was more inviting.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly always this outcry in the UK for more people to play golf. you know, or more people to take up golf, you know, and maybe it is the culture of how the game's learned, which is purely
you know,
what you...
how many golf clubs would be prepared to take 9 holes out? Now, if you've got 27 holes, that's fine. 9 holes out where you just do approach work and you have a clinic, I don't know, in the summer, every Monday evening, and it is for handicap over 24.
That's it, yeah.
And total beginners. And each handicapper has to bring a total beginner.
Yeah.
If you did that, and there was in the area, and all these clubs got together and decided to do it, you would have an explosion in the interest of golf. And as people get older, they still walk, you know, and they still get involved, and they still love it. It's then you've really scored. Yeah. Because we are with our negative avoidance and people scared of failure and don't want to be failures and don't want to be labeled as failures. We're in danger if you're not elite, you're no good.
Yeah.
And I actually think the population is far too big, and there are too many people that deserve a lot more help.
Well, there's definitely more beginners than there are elite players in the world.
Absolutely, but you'd never think so.
But no, you wouldn't know. Well, the other thing is, sometimes there's only an explosion of elite players when there's a process for those beginners to become elite players as well.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I think, America is probably the only country that allows you to go to university and play golf as a scholarship. I'm not totally enamored by the system, because it tends to be most players just develop to become competitors rather than develop as players. Yeah. But I still think it's a bit like, I don't know if you remember the explosion in squash in the UK, and everybody built squash courts everywhere, and there were squash ladders and so on. And the mistake they made was that the same number of people were playing squash more often. There weren't more players. And when that cohort, squash is quite an energetic game, gave up, and then all of a sudden people, what are going to do with the squash courts? And they all became gyms or aerobics rooms and so on and so forth. And it's because they did not spend enough time making squash more accessible to more people.
I think it's brilliant, Dave. And I'm, if I just move this into another dimension, because I'm just conscious of time. I've seen your presentation probably a couple of years ago. I've read the book, The Ugly Zone. I know a couple said to me, "Can you ask Dave about the ugly zone?" Can he give us an insight into the ugly zone and how you've incorporated that into players' practice?
Well, I think the ugly zone, if I go back to my analogy of the press ups, okay. So if you could do whatever I said, I can't remember, 20 press ups, okay, your ugly zone probably starts about 18, 19, 20, 20 and a half, maybe 21. That's the ugly zone. It's the point in which you cannot match your intention. So the ugly zone in chipping might be, okay, right, I'm now 15 yards away from the pin. Okay, I want to stay out here until I can get 5 inside 3 feet, inside 10 shots. So I do the first time, and it's that frustration. It's that, oh no, start again, oh, not again. And when I do the sequences with the pros, their ugly zone is that it's quite interesting how when they miss the first shot, they go, yeah, okay, right. And they miss it again. Yeah, right. And it hasn't really registered yet. And then after about the 4th, 5th, 6th attempt, it's now they're in the ugly zone. And that's where I need them to be. Because now we'll start to get resilience. Now we're actually under the prem. And the biggest challenge, and it's the same with goal kicking, is when you practicing and you miss a couple, your brain flicks to, I don't want to miss. And when it does that, it forgets how to kick or how to hit a ball. And even though you're missing, you still have to focus on the process. So if you've hit a ball in the water, chances are you were thinking, right, I just hit it down to the left. Whatever happens, I don't want it to go down to the right in the water. And we all know that's where the ball goes. Okay. And the brain is a very fickly thing, because as soon as you introduce what you don't want, okay, then it will do it. So if I ask you and I said, right, okay, now I want you now for the rest of this interview is to never, ever think of the green elephant.
Then I'll think.
And sorry?
Then you've now you've sowed the seed now.
Exactly. And you have to remember what to forget. So you can't forget it. So you have to displace it and really, really focus on that target. And there is another skill that where it helps you to do that is that you try and make a simple target really, really difficult. So what I mean by that is if you've let's just say the pin's in the middle of the green and you have a shot and you think, right, this is pretty easy, I should be there. And again, well, it isn't easy. It might be easy to get it on the green, but how easy is it to get it to do 3 bounces and drop in the hole? Exactly 3 bounces. And you watch how the engagement suddenly changes into that detail. Or can you now hit it so it's one bounce past the pin and then come back? So let's say the guy's got a 60 wedge or something like that. You watch the difference in intensity when that happens. And that, that's another skill that the player has to kind of develop, and goal kickers do it. If you've got an easy kick at goal, if there is such a thing, you aim for the middle of the middle. And you get dirty with yourself if it doesn't go the middle of the middle. It might still go over, but it might be a bit of a wobbly hit. Well, you're not satisfied with that. So I want to know how many were middle of the middle.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're really going for, not just getting the ball over.
Yeah. And I suppose in a performance perspective, if you stay in the process and I'm going to hit the middle of that goal, and you don't quite get it's still going over, isn't it? It's just your own.
Yeah, but I just think that if you hit something and it doesn't go quite right, if you continue on down there and don't do anything different, that eventual not quite right will become a miss.
Yeah.
I just that there's I've noticed on the screen there's a guy there who's actually asked, could you train during a lockdown? I don't know if it's come up on your screen.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
But yeah. I think in terms of, I mean, straight away, I'd like to just tackle that with putting.
Yeah.
For example, putting is a great one you can do, and chipping on a carpet. There's loads of things you can do. But if I just give you a couple of examples to put you under the pump, okay? One very, very good practice for distance control with chipping, and we know with wedges, the sort of the sin is deceleration.
Yeah.
We will. Okay. So what you try and do is you find the longest part of your carpet. If you're in a flat like I am here, this room's joined together, so we've probably got 15 feet, okay, of carpet. So from 15 feet, what I would do is put a little T-peg at one end, and then 2 T-pegs at the other end. So I've got a gate and I've got a finishing line. And that gap, start off with, would be, I'm just going to give you that you can decide. Let's say it's going to be 6 feet. So I've got a 6-foot channel and I've got 5 balls and I have to hit them so that they stop in reverse order.
Yeah.
So the first one goes in, the second one must go less than the first. You can see how I'm challenging deceleration here. The next one less than the second. Okay, the next one, and so on, inside 6 feet. If one ball overtakes another, off, start again.
Yeah.
So once you've made a mistake, okay, then back to 1, back to 0, okay? Yeah. And what you try and do is, it may be that you might start at 8 feet. And once you've got 3 times, you've got all 5 balls in the sequence, okay, then reduce the column. So from 8 feet, it's now 7 feet, and then start again. And I think that things like that would give you real sense of touch. You probably, when you